Well, hello and welcome. Thank you. Welcome to the BISA National Conference 2021 and to our session on buildings as safe havens, keeping people safe and well indoors. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. My name's Ewen Rose and I'm your chair for this discussion. And I think it should be a good one. I mean, we started the day on a high note with Professor Kath Noakes talking about many of the things we'll be discussing this afternoon. I think she set the scene wonderfully for us and put our work into really good context. So we're going to pick up on some of that and lots of other things that's going on in this area. So we sort of started off with a description as, is air quality the new wealth gap? Now, we heard George Clark speaking to the conference yesterday morning about the economics of net zero, but he was also talking really about the economics of quality buildings. And of course, our big push at the moment, in light of everything that's happened in the last couple of years, is around indoor air quality. And BISA has a wider campaign going on called Buildings as Safe Havens, because we think everybody should expect their building to be a safe and healthy and productive place. I think that's a reasonable thing to expect, and it's something that our industry should be wanting to deliver, and really we do want to deliver. So because it's a social issue as much as anything else. I mean, the most socially disadvantaged people suffer the worst indoor air quality. And that's contributing to a new type of urban slum, something we've discussed many times in the BISA Health and Wellbeing in Buildings group. The group will analyse what is going wrong, our group today, and suggest a range of solutions to deliver better living and working conditions for everybody. We'll also be referring as we go along to a bit of the guidance that BISA is currently producing. Earlier in the year, we produced a guide on a beginner's guide to indoor air quality, which kind of set the scene for people gaining better awareness and understanding of what we mean when we talk about indoor air quality. And we did that work in collaboration with Mitsubishi Electric, who are our headline sponsor for this conference, so many thanks to them. We followed that up with a guide to good practice for health and well-being in buildings. And we are now working on our solutions guide, because this is back to what George was talking about yesterday morning. There's lots of talk going on at COP26, but what we really need is practical solutions. And that's what we'll be producing later this year and we'll be launching early next year. And all our panelists here are helping on that piece of work, and I'm very grateful to them. The idea will be that we will cover all the technical options that are available for improving ventilation and indoor air quality in buildings, with the aim of helping contractors, specifiers, and end users select the right solution for each specific task and building type. So, over to our expert panel, who will be taking us through all these big topics this afternoon. We're going to get a presentation in a minute from Nathan Wood, who is the Managing Director of Farmwood Limited, but he's also Chair of the BISA Health and Wellbeing in Buildings Group, and a great contributor to everything that we're doing through BISA in this area. So welcome, Nathan. We also have two people from Linaker FM who are well-known members of BISA, and we're delighted to have them with us this afternoon. Linaker on the facilities management side. We've got Jennie Davies, who's a business manager at Linaker, and we've got Lauren Diath, who's a field service supervisor. So hello, Jennie and Lauren. And I know you formed a bit of a group with Nathan at an earlier event. I saw some interesting pictures of that. So good to have you all back together again. And we've also got Doug Booker. Doug is the co-founder and CEO of the National Air Quality Testing Services. So hello, Doug. Thanks for joining us again. And also Peter Dyment, who is our filtration expert. He's the technical manager at Camfil. So welcome, Peter. So Nathan, over to you for your presentation, and then we'll have a Q&A to follow. So Nathan, over to your presentation.
Thank you, Ewan. Evening, everybody. We're going to rattle through this as quickly as we can because we haven't got long, and I'd love to get some really good Q&A sessions going. So let's see if the clicker is going to work here. Fantastic. Okay. So before we talk about the present day, let's drop back to the start of the pandemic, a time when denial regarding the transmission routes, especially that there is a reluctance to talk about COVID-19 being airborne. 239 experts were needed to come together and change the World Health Organization's stance on the risk of COVID-19 becoming airborne. In the following days, amazingly, there was a U-turn. COVID-19 was indeed very likely to be airborne. Unfortunately, overnight, this opened the doors to all manner of indoor air quality experts. I'm very cautious about being called an expert myself. There's a lot of people out there that know a hell of a lot more about me with indoor air quality, hence Doug and Peter being on the call today. There was also a lot of snake oil sales, very clever promotions. A lot of people, even Professor Kevin Oak said this morning, that it's really hard to distinguish the facts from the fiction. And then there's COVID theatre, what makes us feel comfortable, that might actually be doing more harm to our airflow than good. But it's about making people have a sense of security that you are doing things, that there's either physical barriers or indeed that there is, hand sanitisation going on, etc. Let's click on to the next one. Let's get through this pretty quickly. Is that working? Yeah, great. Is it working? We're there. So BISA, throughout the lockdown, we've been doing loads of online webinars all the way through, and with the group, the Wellbeing group, we've put together some fantastic guidance, and I'm really, really proud that everybody's managed to work on this as quickly as they have. Sponsored by Mitsubishi Electric as well. But loads of other organisations, SIBSI, BISRIA, BEMA, you name them, they've all been working behind the scenes to make sure that we've got some really good clarified guidance as to what we should be looking to do within our buildings. A new British standard, BS 40101 from the PAS 3003 with EFT Consult. But there's also ongoing revisions and delays, unfortunately, to approved documents, the Environment Bill. More recently, the World Health Organization also put out some newer, lower threshold limits in terms of air quality. So there's so much going on with what we should be doing or should be looking to do. But we're the professionals, we're the people that know our stuff. I wasn't a fan of the government video that we put out showing that opening up a window was like the Pied Piper of COVID-19. It was naturally find its way out of the window. There is a need for it. Again, we need to understand who our audience is and what people need to understand. In addition to the presentations that went on with BISA, the government guidance, we can't forget the Valence report that was published that outlined the vital need for better ventilation in buildings to reduce the risk of COVID-19 and other infections. This will happen again in our lifetime. There was an emphasis on educating building operators on how the behaviour of people, controls and maintenance have a huge impact on ventilation and our buildings and our building performance. There's a huge skills gap. Lots of the presentations today spoke about skills gap, the need for upskilling, retraining, re-recruitment. I don't know where these people are out there that need this upskilling and everything else. There's lots of companies out there looking for them. The drive for our buildings to become our safe havens before winter was evident, but it lacked sort of joint up thinking in terms of the sustainability message. It was just sort of a bit of a knee-jerk for ventilation rather than the joined up thinking to align the two. Drop back to September 2020 when Boris was announcing new restrictions for England. There was a report by the CBI and the Clean Air Fund showcasing some key figures that you can see on screen there. I'm not going to read those out because I'd like to get into the Q&A. Since then, there's been some really good studies proving a direct correlation between reduced particulate matter in the air we breathe and an increase in our cognitive function. So there's so much proof and evidence, historical data that's coming forward that we all need to start and pay really close attention to. These are the latest World Health Organization guidelines, which they've slashed the previously acceptable levels and added some new ones that we need to be aware of. But we need our government to act on them. They're at COP26 at the moment, doing a really good sort of showcasing of what we should be doing and putting their faces out there. But we need action. And previously, the government's been taken to court 3 times by Client Earth, and they've lost, where the judge ruled their plans as being unlawful. And I'd recommend anybody check out James Thornton's video with Client Earth on YouTube. It's really good the way that they put the information across. But as humans, we breathe lungfuls, not timed averages of air pollution. We need some measurable data, but we need to also understand, what we're breathing. And to me, it's lungfuls. So, is there a safe exposure? Depending on the people that are breathing, it's hard to say. But it's been proven, and I've said this many times before, if we're exposed to ultrafine particles and we breathe those in for up to 15 minutes, they stay in our blood and urine and all travel all around our body for up to 3 months. So really, are there safe limits of exposure? So back to the Valence report, there's the 5 key points on there. There are more, they're the key points, but it's sort of highlighting that everything that we're talking about as industry professionals, it's on us now. And a lot of what's been said previously over the last 2 days is that it is on us. We're the building engineering services sector, HVAC sector. We know our clean air rules, regulations, what's coming through, what we can do. The previous presentation on fluid dynamics was fantastic. I've made pages of notes from them guys. So now is our time. So what actually can we do practically now to make our buildings safe havens? I picked out a little comment from Graham Fox at BISA. The knowledge of professional institutions is hugely valuable, but unless they align their theoretical expertise and design philosophies with industry practitioners who operate at the sharp end and know what's achievable, we will not be able to deliver the solution that the country needs. And this echoes perfectly what Professor Cathy Noakes said this morning. They want some joined up thinking with people like us within the industry to help them push forward these regulations. So at this stage, I'd like to hand over to Jennie and Lauren. I've got to do the clicker here, so if you ladies would like to take the stage and tell me when you need the slides changing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we mentioned about that the service providers need to take responsibility, and I think it does work hand in hand with the service providers and the experts that are out in the industry, educating landlords, educating the people that are responsible. If you can go on to the next slide, please, Nathan. So it all starts with the appetite of those that are responsible. So we talk about smart buildings, we talk about technology, we talk about all the wonderful ventilation works and where the industry is moving forward in those areas. But unless the actual landlord or the responsible person has an appetite to move forward and to look at the ventilation that they're providing for their tenants or their residents, then we're talking of a subject that isn't going to improve a lot of the buildings around the UK. We need to understand the possibilities and the limitations. The majority of the buildings out in, well, certainly in our portfolio in Linaker, they are old buildings. They're not ever going to be able to have all this wonderful technology, which will improve the ventilation. So understanding the limitations of the buildings and the limitations of the budgets from those that are responsible allows us to create a workable solution for a lot of these landlords. If you can go on to the next slide, please, Nathan. So what can we do? We talk about quick wins, and me and Lauren are quite passionate about this. This is something we do on a daily basis. There's a picture there. I'm conscious of time, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but this picture here was taken from a new client of mine a couple of weeks ago who approached me after they had an audit and found that all of the filters that were providing or should have been providing filtrated air into each of the apartments were absolutely clogged up and completely filthy. They've been this way for 5 years. So we talk about expectation. The expectation of these people buying very expensive apartments in city centres is that they are breathing in clean air, and that is not the reality in many occasions. Lauren, do you want to take the stage on this next slide here?
So from my experience as an engineer, generally I would come across, as you can see in the image, dirty ductwork. But as Jennie mentioned previously, it's more so people not actually being aware of the equipment they have in their buildings. Like we obviously cover PPMs, whether they're monthly, yearly, or whatever the client decides, basically. But if they're not actually fully aware of what they have to start with, this is the cause. So we generally get calls for when something's broken already. There needs to be something in place that's obviously not letting it reach that sort of state. So I think, like I said, it's just making people aware. Whoever's the landlord of the building, whoever takes ownership, they need to understand their equipment a little bit more, I believe.
And I think that it's a great point. Again, recently, literally in the last couple of weeks, I was completing some surveys for a portfolio of buildings. The surveys were being completed, and the tender was being completed by a well-known consultant. Who, when we were walking around, said, "I think there's an AHU somewhere in this building, because we can see the vents. We can see where we can feel something coming through," but didn't know where the AHU was. And this is a consultant. So unless we are educating the responsible people of those buildings to ensure that they know what's in their buildings, they know what maintenance is required, and they are keeping on top of that maintenance and checking it's happening, then we're going to continue to have this problem. So what can we do? We can go back to the basics. So basic maintenance on all of your AHUs, your extract, your ductwork, regular filter changes is going to increase the airflow by up to 30%. It reduces strain on components, associated breakdowns, and increases the lifespan of equipment. I know, Lauren, this is something you're really, really keen on and see on a daily basis, the ramifications of not completing maintenance and the problems that then causes when assets are left to degrade.
I do. It's like I really can't see the writing on the screen at the moment. You have to bear with me with the notes. Basically, when we turn up to a site, generally I'm blind basically until I get there. Like I have no idea unless I visit that site multiple times of the layout of the equipment, where everything is. I mean, what sort of PPMs they have in place. So for me, I don't see why it'd be any different for the person that takes ownership of that building to me actually learning where everything is. They need that basic knowledge. Like I don't expect them to read all the manuals, but there just needs to be something in place for whoever takes ownership to have an idea, like to take ownership of their equipment. So like I said, every day we get calls for something that's already broken. By then it's too late, really. That's like the whole point of the planned preventative maintenance is to keep things like prolong their life, keep things clean. Obviously the quality of the air, it could be any aspect. I'm multi-skills, I cover quite a lot. But yeah, I think from starting from basics, it's just giving people the knowledge so we can move from there, basically.
And I think once we then understand what's on site, then you can create that plan on basic maintenance, and then you can also then start talking and looking, working with your client and advising them and educating them on asset replacement, where is best to spend their money. A lot of landlords worry about what the reception looks like and what fancy lights they have, and the front house, and I think back of house is always or tends to be ignored in a lot of occasions. So just going back to basics, getting the equipment schedules correct, making sure you know what's in your building and that you're maintaining those basic systems will ensure that at least the basic air quality is there. As I say, we constantly see buildings that have terrible air quality because of basic maintenance not being completed. And I shall now hand over to the other two panelists.
All right. Well, thank you guys for that presentation. That was great. I mean, you covered the great ground, and actually, what you did very nicely there was sort of follow up well from what Kath Noakes was talking about this morning, which is the broader picture. And she was saying we need to sort of understand the systems better. And she said actually a lot of this stuff that we've already got existing in buildings just needs to be looked after and used better. There's a lot of snake oil salesmen out there trying to sell new things. But if we understand what we've already got in the building and then we look after it better and maybe we simplify it, we'll end up with the result that we need without this problem of getting clients to have to pay money that they really don't want to. But it's getting that equation right, isn't it? Showing them that there's a benefit and it doesn't need to cost the earth. And so it's understanding the problem. So Doug, I mean, that's your area, understanding what building owners are up against. And measuring and monitoring was another thing that Kath Noakes mentioned this morning, was about how it's improving awareness of the problems inside buildings.
Well, yeah, that's quite right. And I think it's a really great presentation to highlight that some of the problems are really quite simple about how we use the technologies that are already installed. But our NAQTS's main area of operation is really about trying to make the invisible visible. For a lot of these different airborne pollutants, you're not aware of their effects until it's too late and it's already led to a worse standard of health or premature death over the long run. So for us, it's really about providing building occupants and facilities managers with data to show how the building and people within the building are behaving.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. And Peter, this whole issue of maintenance, I mean, that goes right to the heart of your business, doesn't it? Wonderful filtration technology, but if you don't look after it, it's not going to do the job.
No, absolutely. I was very glad to hear Jennie and Lauren were talking about the maintenance of air filters. It's something that's often neglected, and quite often you can use monitoring devices, pressure gauges across the filters to tell when the dust gets too much, it starts to increase the pressure and it's time to change the filter. They're fairly obvious sort of monitoring. It needs the engineers on site to take an interest in the plant. And indeed, I think we're moving into an age now of air monitoring, so that we're checking, is the system delivering clean air into the indoor space? And if not, maybe we need to look at optimizing. Certainly we do low energy air filters, which are capable of saving a lot of energy, bearing in mind COP26 and all this sort of thing. You can optimize your system and also make sure it delivers clean air. The technology is there, and it does work if it's properly applied.
Thank you, Peter. I mean, we're getting very close to the end of our time, but what I want to do is end on an optimistic note, because that's what we've been trying to do at the conference, and we'll be going into our closing plenary shortly with David Freeze, and we're going to look at coming out of this with some optimistic stuff. And I think you've given us lots of food for thought and to be optimistic about, because never has ventilation been more high profile. And Kath Noakes said she never thought she would see the day when the Prime Minister was talking about ventilation. So can I just go through each of you in order and just say now, because of this, because of the pandemic, because of everything we're going through, because the Prime Minister seems to now be an expert on ventilation as well, have we now got the opportunity to get that awareness out there that Jennie was talking about, I think, to make sure that clients know they've got to do something in this area now? Nathan, let's kick off with you.
Yeah, totally. I would like to see more funding for apprenticeships, be that an 18-year-old or a 48-year-old man or woman. I just think that regardless of age, we need better funding to get people into our industry at an early age, or indeed an older age, for reskilling.
So
I agree. Yeah. Sorry.
So go on. Sorry, I was just being told we were running out of time. That was all.
All right, sorry. Yeah, no, 100%. I just think we need to get more people into the industry. Like, I know from experience, obviously, like supervising a team, we are very short at the moment. But yeah, there just needs to be more people, more of an awareness through everybody, not just engineers, just to push things forward, really. Maybe more of rules and regulations, probably push these sort of things forward too.
Yeah. For me, I think I mentioned it on the last presentation we did with Nathan, but enforcement, I think, is, we talk about gas servicing and that, compliance and statutory. Why are we not making the basics of filter changes statutory, given the impact that has when they're not changed on a regular basis.
Thank you. Doug?
Well, I'd say indoor air quality is no longer the junior partner to outdoor air. Indoor air has never been more relevant. And I think that's great in us, people working in buildings, helping to frame it as an asset that we should be aiming for rather than a potential liability.
Thanks, Doug. And Peter, your final word is with you.
Yes, very quickly. Yeah, I think the WHO have delivered in terms of reducing the reference levels of particulates and NO2, which are the two most damaging air pollutants of concern, because COVID, of course, is a particle, and fine combustion particulates from traffic are a major issue. We've just got to get the maintenance sorted out. BESA have brought out a great guide for maintenance, which we should all be reading up on, along with the other guidance that's there. And get some practical solutions in place, optimize main air handling unit systems, and also use standalone air purifiers where needed and air monitors to tell us we're actually getting results.
That's fantastic. Thank you, guys. We are out of time. That was great, though. That's exactly what we wanted. We've been saying all the way through this conference, we want practical solutions, and you guys went right to the heart of the matter. And I think getting back to basics, what a great message. Get back to basics, do the maintenance, and then if you want to do something fancy after that, then fine. But let's get the basics right, and let's make people feel safe and well in their buildings. So buildings are safe havens, and I'll be taking that message to the closing plenary, which is starting in a few minutes. So please come and join us there. Nathan's joining me there as well. So a bit more relaxed. I think we're all having a beer, but those of you who aren't actually with us, you'll have to supply your own beer. So. But thanks, guys, very much. Thank you for your presentation. That was excellent. And we'll obviously be carrying on this work through the BESA Health and Wellbeing in Buildings group. So please keep working with us on that. Thank you very much, guys. See you in a few minutes.